Hi there, grade 12s, and good afternoon. I hope you can all hear me. I hope I'm nice and loud and clear. But good afternoon to a session that we were supposed to do on Friday, but my apologies due to some technical difficulties we were having. We weren't able to jump on that. So, as promised, I'm going to be going through the theory modules that you would have covered now in term 1 and term 2. So I'm going to breeze through those modules. And while we're doing that, I'm also going to look at the 2021 June paper and 2022 paper just to see sort of what kind of questions have actually come up in the last 2 years. And this should give you a good indication of sort of what to expect for this June's paper. Okay. So, you know how things go when we do our live. Feel free to pop me a question in the chat. Let me know, where you're joining me from, what school, what area. And if you haven't seen, I'm on both TikTok and YouTube. And TikTok is primarily there for the cat terms. So I sometimes take that, put it in as YouTube Shorts. But go along, like and follow that. And then also, don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. We are on our way to our first 10K subscribers. I think I'm about less than 50 subscribers from our 10K. So definitely looking forward to hitting that 10K. And thank you very much to all of you for the support. So with that said, let us jump in. And Sashanguve, hi. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. And I see Durban's in the house here as well, Iman. Nice to have you guys with me. Okay. So in term 1, we looked at module 1.1, computers in our everyday lives. We looked at why we use computers. And this is something that's going to keep coming up. I actually want to just open those papers so I have them next to me. So that we can just touch on, some of the terms that come up. So a question like this asking, why would we be using computers and looking at the efficiency, the accuracy, the reliability? This is something that creeps into the different scenarios that you end up finding when you get your paper. Because remember now, your June paper is going to have a certain structure. And I think let me touch on that first. So when it comes to your June paper, there is a particular structure. You usually get your multiple choice questions. Sometimes you get true and false. I don't think it's in this year. You also get the section where you need to match the column, right? So you need to understand the term and the explanation, or it's the explanation and you've got to match it up with the term. From there, we then have, we always have some questions, theory questions based on practical work. There are questions that have come up in the last 2 years under system technologies where we look at asking you to identify the hardware. So we give you a picture of some sort of hardware. You need to not only identify the hardware, number one, but you also need to give us the function. What is that piece of hardware actually doing? And that's how you end up getting your marks. From there's usually scenarios around that. Then you have a section that focuses on your internet and network technologies, and we're going to go through that. A section on information management, social implications, solution development, and that mainly focuses on prac work, asking it, in a theory form. And then our last one is usually our massive integrated scenario. So that's usually what we end up having, sort of every June, September, end of the year. That's more or less the structure that you can expect. Okay, so I'm going to take myself off the screen here a little bit, and let's continue with our modules. All right, so that's what the computers are used for. We know when it comes to communication, what it is used for and how it can benefit us in terms of, being able to interact with everyone worldwide, cutting communication costs, eliminating time and distance constraints, all these various types of things. So that's just the general advantages when it comes to using computers and computer systems. So when we look now at the different types of computer systems, and when comparing computers, we need to look at the following: how powerful they are, what they are used for, their size, and the software they are going to use. So you need to think of this, for example, when it comes to buying your phone. Now, I know most of you, when you end up buying a phone, what do? You look at the camera. Okay, it's okay. Okay, you look at the camera. You don't look at anything else. But the CPU, if that's where all your processing takes place, that's going to be important. Okay, as you can hear, I'm still at school. Okay, so how powerful that piece of hardware is, what it's going to be used for. What is your phone going to be used for? What's that computer going to be used for? That's going to influence the size. Also, do I want it to be mobile? And what sort of software am I going to be using on that? Now, when we talk about non-portable computers, please, it doesn't mean that it cannot be moved. It means that generally it should not be moved. So we have our computer over here, the orange being our system unit. And please don't call this a tower in the exams. You are going to get it wrong, right? Do not call it a tower. This is a system unit, our monitor, our mouse, our keyboard, etc. So our non-portable computers are generally large, not meant to be moved around. They are more powerful than our portable computers, but there are different advantages and disadvantages to that. It all depends on what you're actually going to be doing with it. Okay. There they do mention to us that the all-in-one units are easier to transport and they take up less space. That's fine. Again, it all depends on what you are going to be doing with it. Now, our non-portable computers, we get our desktops and we get our servers. At this point, we should know the difference between our desktop and our server. And then we have our entry-level computer. Now, remember, our server, number one, that's a massively powerful computer. It's rendering services onto the network, like a file server and internet sharing, all these type of things. Our desktop computer is just our PC that's there on our desk or at home, and it's doing the basic things. And then we have our entry level, which is just like the cheapest in that range. So if I'm buying an entry level desktop, it means I'm buying the cheapest desktop, within that range. When I'm looking at an entry level, maybe entry level laptop, I'm looking at the cheapest one. It's also got low hardware specifications. And when they talk about these home editions, those home editions of the operating system means that there's also less features that come with that operating system. Things that you are usually taking for granted. You think it's always going to be there, but in these home editions, some of them are not there, like changing the background and the screensaver and things like that. But if it doesn't faze you, then that's usually okay. On the portable computer side, remember, these are computers that have an all-in-one design. So everything is built in, the monitor, the keyboard, the mouse. It's there designed to fold, to carry, and it folds in order that it can protect the delicate parts. So that's the difference between our portable computers and our non-portable computers. And here we have a few examples, like our laptops, tablets, hybrid computers, smartphone, and phablet. Don't get confused with phablet. That's our combination of, it's basically a tablet that has the ability to make phone calls as well. So that's where the whole phablet story comes in. Okay, so before we go into the categories of users, I'm going to look at last year's, 2021's terms that they enjoyed asking you with Match the Column. So let me just see if I can throw this up here. Okay, so in 2021, I hope you can see that. Yeah, should be up there. Here you can see an example of what they asked. So they were looking at things like anti-spyware, deep web. These are terms that have come up in 2021. And let me just get 2022's. And this was from 2022. So you can see what has been asked over the last 2 years. Okay. You can see some of them are similar. We're still looking at RAM, ROM, DPI or dots per inch, plug and play, ransomware, anti spyware, default value, access. Okay. So these are just some of the typical terms that do get asked. And it's important that you know your terms. This is why I made that TikTok channel. So please, go and check that out. Iman, I can't comment on that. Okay, I'm just showing you samples from different papers, things that they've been asking that. These are actually IAB papers, but it applies to the DBE as well. The terms remain the same. People often ask what's the sort of difference between IAB and the DBE, even though you might find that we're using the same textbook, and it's just the depth to which the IAB goes. So they go into a lot more detail, a lot more depth, and for me that's the big difference that I've seen when it comes to that. So your terms are very important. Okay. Now with your scenarios, you do get scenarios based on your types of users. So please remember that you have your personal user, and you can see the type of tasks that they are busy with. Most people are sort of personal users. They sort of float between a personal and mobile user, but that's generally what people do. Now, when it comes to the Soho user, you can see that is slightly different because this is someone who's now working not necessarily from home, but they have a small office environment at home where they're doing a bit of accounting, some document archiving, maybe some databases, as they say in there. So if you're doing these type of things, you'll usually be a Soho user. Also, you'll notice because they're just doing basic things, they don't need a very powerful computer. So they'll be using your entry-level computers. These are the guys who use the more powerful computers, our power users, hardcore gamers, scientists, video editing. I mean, with what I'm doing here and video editing and stuff like that, I need, whether it's portable or not, I need a powerful PC in order to actually do that type of work. So these people are going to need the top of the range hardware and software in order to do what they do. Okay. Then we've got our mobile user. And again, please understand the difference between these users. So the mobile user, you can see there, browsing the internet, playing games, reading books, navigating with GPS. This is someone who just wants to take their technology on the go. And that's why I say a lot of people float sort of between either being a personal user or a mobile user. This term you must know, you must be able to explain it, you must be able to give an example. So convergence, there we see where we're taking separate technologies and bringing them together into a single device. And you might have to give an example of it, like a tablet or a smartphone, or even naming one of the technologies that would be found in the smartphone that used to be sort of separate. Okay, so these were all separate devices or technologies on their own. Right, so that's module 1.1. And I think now I just want to look at okay, so here we go. Now, when it comes to the hardware, let me just see. So when I talk about identifying computer hardware, right? You might be given a picture like this. If you go to your browser, you might be given anything like this. They might ask you to identify one piece of hardware. maybe the monitor, maybe the hard drive, maybe the motherboard, anything like that. And just to illustrate to you, here's an example. Just want to show you so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. So here's an example, right? Here we have hardware. This is our RAM. This is a graphics card. This is a router. And here I have my motherboard. So with these type of questions, and I'm going to show you another example, just so we can get this across, and I hope you are with me. Here's another example. Here I have a SIM card. I've got a power supply. I've got a VR headset. I've also got a motherboard here as well. So you can see what's come up over the last 2 years. Okay. That's just to show you the sort of trend, but you must be able to at least, and I mean, I think this goes without saying, guys, the motherboard, the RAM, the CPU fan, the power supply, those sort of things are standard. Those are things that you get asked regularly. What is a router? Those type of things. So familiarize yourself with pictures of that hardware. Be able to identify it in terms of pictures, and also be able to give its main function. What does it do? What does the Wi-Fi router do? What does the CPU do? What does the motherboard do? Okay, you need to answer those questions in order to get the most marks out of that section. All right, let's go on with hardware, and we touch on the information processing cycle. Now, you'll notice the difference in the information processing cycle, where now we have communication added to the cycle as well. So don't forget that. What's important here is this. The first three, the input, processing, and output. And I want to show you why. Let's go. I want to take you somewhere. I saw in some of the previous papers, what happened was they actually asked scenarios based on the information processing cycle, but not the normal things. Like if you're in grade 10 or 11, they might ask you, well, give me what is input, and give me an example of input. Whereas in grade 12, we now want you to actually take this information and apply it to the real world. So I might ask you, well, using the analogy of a cell phone, and saving somebody's number, how would you explain the information processing cycle? And they might, I know in previous papers, they gave you input, processing, and output. And then you'll explain, well, with input, this is where I am actually going to be typing the person's contact number into my phone. Processing is where the phone is now processing the instructions I'm giving it. And it's looking to see if this number is already there. And then once I've saved it, the output gives me the display to show me what I've typed in and what I've actually saved. Okay, so that is something that comes up often. Okay. Okay, by now we know what input is, we know what output is. Here's an example of exactly what I'm saying. This is also where we're talking about combining input and output. Remember, our smartphones with the touchscreen, anything that's touchscreen is going to be an input and output device. Okay, the point of sale systems are always important as well. They can ask you that because it's connected to a network. It's using a barcode scanner. It's using a card reader. So it's using all these different technologies. That's why it's known as a point of sale system, not just one, particular device there. And most of us would have seen some setup like this with musicians. And I know also with some YouTubers making music with cats. Just saying. Okay. Then we have processing. So again, a lot of this we have gone through already. You know what processing is. This is now where, after we've now inputted our instructions. We've sent our instructions to the PC. The CPU and the RAM is busy processing through all of this. It's seeing what needs to be done, what output needs to be formed from what you actually put in. And it typically involves tasks such as searching, sorting, comparisons, and mathematical calculations. So that's on the processing side. Storage, fairly simple. Where are we going to be saving everything to? Right? It could be a flash drive. It could be an external hard drive. You want to choose the correct storage method and media because some of us use it for backups. Sometimes we want to try and even protect sensitive data. So you don't want to just put it on a little flash drive that you're just going to chuck to the side. No, you don't want that. You want to put it onto a hard drive that you know you can keep safe and secure. There are different types of external hard drives, so that all falls under our storage. Where are we keeping and saving our files? Then our input devices, the devices that give instructions to the PC. Now, this is where we see the big difference between grade 11 and grade 12. In grade 11, we just looked at, well, there's a keyboard, we know it gives commands, and it's a fast way to enter text, and that was it. In grade 12, we now deal with the limitations. The keyboard, for example, takes up space, can be difficult to use for some people. It was never designed to work with the GUI that we have. And what does that stand for? The graphical user interface. The fact that we've got menus, icons, a desktop, and we can interact with those graphics. Then with that, we've also got buying decision factors. So why are we buying a particular keyboard? Well, it might be because we want an ergonomically designed keyboard. Maybe we want to move from wired to wireless. And then with our keyboard and mouse, especially with the wireless, you'll notice that the troubleshooting is more or less the same. Okay, so here with wireless, we've got keyboard not responding, batteries, dongle, disconnect, connect. You'll see with our mouse, we've got more or less the same. It's basically the same. What we can also do is reboot the PC. And again, when buying, we look at our ergonomic considerations and whether we want it to be wired or wireless. So knowing the hardware, knowing how the hardware works is important. Our touchscreens, most of us know what it's used for. We know the advantage. We know these things that we picked up on in grade 10. And we just need to know the limitations. Now, I usually say when it comes to these things, I mean, there's a whole lot listed here. What you want to do is just pick up on the two most important to you. Two that you can remember, take it, run with it, and that's fine. The touchpad, same story. This is supposed to replace the mouse on the laptop. We know then what it's used for. But for some, it's difficult to use, and some people just don't want to use it. I'm not a fan of it myself, so that's part of its limitations. Okay, now I just want to jump from there to something that I'm seeing now that we're talking about scanners. Scanners are always very important. Okay, and before we go on to that, I just want to show you, now that we've spoken about the GUI, to show you a sample question that we've had before. So here's something from 2021, and there you can see an operating system firmware or system software exists on all computers and computing devices. Most of these provide a GUI for better user interface and basic security. Explain what a GUI is and how it provides better user interface. Sorry, it's been a long day. What input device is best to use with a GUI? Give 2 examples of how an operating system provides you with a basic level of security. So this is all on your GUI and your operating system. I think we had questions similar to that in 2022 as well. Let me just check on that for you quickly. Yeah, the GUI. Again, you had to explain what a GUI is, and input device associated with the GUI. What does the operating system do as well? So you can see those type of questions do come in. So with our scanner, Please know what it does. Also, OCR software, always important. Remember, OCR software is there to do what? To take our our hard copy, bring it into a digital format and be able to edit it. Okay. So again, these are all things you can go through. I'm just going to breeze through this. What's important here also is the fact that errors in the image size or quality. If we have those errors, we can check the settings. If it's non-responsive, we only have a few things that we can look at because it usually plugs in via USB. Then we've got our digital cameras that we looked at. And then we've got factors there. Now, this is important. I've actually done videos on this. The resolution, and you can see minimum DPI for printing, right? 72 DPI suitable, and that's dots per inch. The higher that number, the better the quality of the image. That's my resolution. My image quality depends on the color depth, the sensor size, and the ISO rating. I just did a video, I think a YouTube short on this ISO rating. And then the sensor size. So please, these things you must know when it comes to your cameras. Okay, our webcams, most of us know what the webcam is. Some of us have it built into our laptops, and they've got very low resolution, and they need to be connected to some sort of ICT device. So it's either built into your laptop or you need to connect it to one via USB. Now, webcam is fairly easy to troubleshoot. And again, please remember the reason we are talking about troubleshooting is because these are things that can come up in scenarios. You know, we are using webcams with a particular classroom and the webcam on one computer doesn't seem to work. What can you do? Well, check that it's plugged in properly. Unplug it. Plug it in again. Maybe restart the PC. See that the camera is switched on. Okay? Those are all the different things that can come up. Microphones. Now, these are things that are going to come up because folks, think about where we are now and what we've been through. We have come through COVID. We have moved sort of away from a lot of the online stuff. We're sort of going back to normal. But now you need to throw into consideration load shedding as well. So in order to have a very accurate paper, we should be looking at what's going on currently and how does ICT fit into that. So, you know, what can you do to assist with load shedding? All of those type of things. So we know what the microphone is there for. A lot of devices have built-in microphones, not ideal for high quality sound. And can be difficult to use in noisy environments. With that, your troubleshooting is usually only a problem if it's plugged into the wrong jack. Maybe it's not switched on, if you've got a different setup. Now, on the scanners, I just want to see, yeah. So let me just get this. So typical questions that have come up with regards to scanners are things like the resolution settings, questions on OCR software. Let's see what other questions have they come up with. What types of files or file extensions? No, let me see here. Oh, name 2 file types or extensions that the photos might be saved as. So when I take my hard copy and I scan that into the PC, what might that be saved as? Some people might save that as a Word document. Some might save it as a PDF document. Any of those. Okay. I think that's really it on the scanners. Scanners, they might ask you questions also on DPI, your dots per inch. And again, the higher that is, the better the quality of the image. Also bear in mind that if the image you're scanning in is a bad quality, you know, I mean, if the paper's crumpled and things like that, then yeah, what you get digitally is going to be exactly the same. So then we had our output devices, monitors. We know this. Think of resolution, please. Think of quality. There you can see your aspect ratio. Again, things like color depth, pixel density. These are items which get asked in the paper regularly. Okay, regularly. And I'm going to go through some examples when I'm done with all of this. So know this as well, looking at our problems and solutions, what we can do. speakers and headphones. I know most of us know this. Then our printers. Please know the difference between these. Okay, our laser, working with toner, it burns the image onto the page. Our inkjet works with ink. It sprays ink onto the page in order for us to get our image. The dot matrix, you always think of the dot matrix as that old big printer that makes a lot of noise when it prints. When it prints. Our laser is expensive to buy, but cheaper to maintain. Our inkjet is cheaper to buy, but it is going to cost more in the long run to maintain it. And also, when you get scenarios on this, look at how many prints they are actually talking about, okay? Because that does play a role. If they're saying to you that they're looking at, 500 prints a month, an inkjet is not going to cut it. All right, you're just going to spend too much on maintenance. So we then have our troubleshooting, whether it is physically plugged in and not, responding, whether it's connected via Wi-Fi and having issues there. Please think of that as well. Okay, Sinclair, I will check on that link and I'll just make a modification to that after this session. Okay, thank you for letting me know. I'm going to make a note of that. Google Drive. Cool, thank you very much. Right, we could even have paper stuck in the printer. We want to remove that manually. And there's going to be, like I mentioned now, different reasons why we are buying a printer. This one, speed, pages per minute. It is something that comes up regularly. Okay. We also want to think if the printer is compatible to our particular computer. So these are all factors that we look at when buying a printer. Then 3D printing. 3D printing is something that is going to pop its head. If you haven't seen it in a paper yet, you will be seeing it. So with 3D printing, the first thing they're usually going to look at is just getting to see if you understand what 3D printing is. So what is it used for? Well, it's used to print 3D objects. Okay. It can print out prototypes of new designs. It can print custom designs. I mean, I've printed a number of things in my class via the 3D printer. They are expensive. I don't know if I can say they're slow. It's all going to depend on the print. A little bit noisy, and it needs a lot of control and attention. That I will definitely agree with. It does require that. But phenomenal devices. So just understand what they are, how they work, and how they can benefit someone. I know there was a scenario once where they said this guy was busy with drones, and instead of going to buy spares, what he would do is he would actually 3D print his spares. So why would he do that? Well, he can customize his spares to his particular device. It's going to cost him less to print it than to go and buy it. And if he needs 100 of the stuff, he can print 100. So there's the convenience aspect to it. There's the cost saving, all these different things when it comes to that. The data projector, most of us know what the data projector does. Okay, you could have issues with the bulb. I don't think special drivers will be needed. And then our storage devices. This is again something always comes up in the specs of the PC. Now that's usually under our hardware. I just want to get there quickly. And please don't just think that when these things get asked, it's just, your desktop computer. They could be using a tablet. They could be using a cell phone. They could use a laptop, anything like that. But this is our traditional hard drive. Okay? We've got disks that are spinning inside. That's how the info gets read. Hello, Caleb. So you have all this in place, right? Then you also have some troubleshooting that we can look at. Well, most of you, I know I sometimes struggle with that as well. Storage may be full. So we need to delete files. I know you don't want to delete your videos and your pictures, but you need to move it. Sometimes the system can be slow. Sometimes files can be corrupted, right? So you need to look at that. Then we've got our external hard drive. We know how that works, and there are different sizes to our external hard drives as well. We've got our flash drives that they dealt with there as well. And then we have the big one, our SSDs. So this is where I want to just pause for a minute, because I know this does get asked. I just want to make sure I'm in the correct paper. There we go. All right. So, like I mentioned to you before, if you get the specs of a PC like this, look at this third one. 256 gigs SSD. What does that mean? This is the type of hard drive. It's a solid state drive. What does that mean? That's what it means. Okay, it's an electronic alternative to your traditional hard drive. There's no moving parts. It's faster. It's smaller. It's more energy efficient, but it is more expensive. Now, while I'm saying that, the specs of the PC is always going to be important. Okay, you need to know how to read this. So if I look at this, I can see here's the manufacturer, AMD. What's the model? Well, it's a Ryzen 9. What's the speed of the CPU? It's 3.4 gigahertz. What's the size of the monitor? Well, it's a 17-inch monitor. That's the resolution. That is the refresh rate. That's the size of my hard drive, also known as secondary memory. This is the size and model of my RAM, or my primary memory. I've got 4 USB ports. I've got an HDMI port. I've got a USB-C port. So a lot of questions can be asked, and in the past has been asked from that. So understand what they can ask you. They can talk about the resolution. They can ask if it's got Wi-Fi connectivity, the make and model of the CPU, all those type of things. That is all important. You could even get something like this, where you look at different devices. And here you can see you're looking at cell phones and tablets. But have a look. What do we have? Do we have a screen? Yes. Processor? Yes. RAM? Storage? Right? So we can still get questions asked from even comparisons like this. Okay, that was 2021. So please know the difference between your hard drive and your SSD. You might get questions on the optical drive. We know that's a drive that plays our CDs and our DVDs, but we'll have to see how that goes. Our communication devices, we've got our cellular modems, we've got our ADSL router, and then we go on to module 1.3. Okay, I'm just trying to push through some of these slides so I can look more at the question paper. Okay, I hope you guys are still with me. All right. So we've got some considerations when buying a computer. We looked at this earlier. Does it need to be mobile? We need to look at the type of processor, the RAM, and the storage. Is there a legal operating system provided? And then with that, okay, so these are the things we think about when we are going to buy a PC. Then we look at our system unit. What's in our system unit? We find our CPU. And these are questions, typical questions that can get asked. You can see our power user is going to look at this because they're going to buy the best one they can possibly afford. Here I have an example of a motherboard. There's my RAM. This is my CPU fan, and my CPU is underneath here. So we know what RAM is. Again, it's for any user, but again, the power user is going to want as much as they can possibly get their hands on. So this is all stuff that's in your system unit. Your hard drive. Okay, what type of hard drive are you going to go for? Normal hard drive, SSD, depends on what you're going to be using it for. This is a graphics card. How do I know that? Well, I look at my ports. This is DVI, I've got VGA, and I've got HDMI. This is an expansion card because it's going to slot into a card or a slot the card's going to slot into a slot on the motherboard, fit into a slot on the motherboard, and it's got its own memory and its own fan here as well to keep this card cool. So that is our video card. Okay, please, again, these things are all inside our system unit. There's more ports that they went through as well. Our FireWire ports, we've got USB, we've got USB-C, we've got network ports as well. Wi-Fi, technically not a port, but many computers have built-in support for Wi-Fi. So your desktop doesn't always have that. So what happens is you get a little dongle that you can put into your USB port, and it gives you that facility so that your desktop can actually pick up a Wi-Fi connectivity. Then we've got our case. They mentioned generally we don't have much of a choice, and to a large extent that is true, but we know we can actually go and buy different cases as well. Okay, then we look at devices that connect to our PC, and again, I'm just going to breeze through this. We've got our mouse and keyboard, we've got our monitor, it's used by most people, our printers again as well. Okay, these are all what we call peripherals, remember? Peripherals. Our external storage, again, these are things we've already spoken about, our scanners. And then this section, always a troublemaker. Always a troublemaker. When we are looking at devices for disabled and impaired users. Now, there's a difference between a disabled and an impaired user. If somebody's blind, they are disabled because they can't see. A visually impaired person is someone who can still see but needs something extra. So maybe like spectacles, or contacts or things like that. Same with our hearing impaired and deaf. And then the motor control is completely different because that is a disability there. So you need to look at what sort of devices would be able to help these people in the different categories so that they can use the computer as we use it. All right. And then, again, they went into the value of ICT. We've done that already. So I'm just going to go past that. Yeah. Accessibility. I'm mentioning this because these are things that come up in your scenarios. These are the kind of things that they use when it comes to your scenarios. And please read the scenarios. Understand the question first before you are going to be answering it. Okay. Then on the software side, and I maybe just want to quickly move over to something else. So one of the other categories in our hardware, or when we talk about hardware devices, is our section on internet and network technologies. So this was a 2021 paper, and here you can see they're asking questions on wired networks, on a switch. So things like a LAN, local area network. What is your switch? What is an IP address? What is a WLAN, our wireless LAN? Our IP address, remember, identifies us on a network. Here we can see them bringing in technology like Skype. Maybe it would be WhatsApp as well, for doing video calls. Why would you be using things like that? And then also things like our cloud computing and online storage. And guys, at this point, you should know the difference between like a website, a browser, cloud computing, online storage, all those type of things. Okay, that was the one paper. Let me just check on the other one. Yes. Here you can see we've got questions from our old paper, things like the general function of a server. What's the difference between our internet and our intranet? Now remember, our internet is our global collection of networks that's there to share information. Our intranet is an internet that is, or internet-like environment that is within a particular company. So only the people within that company will be able to access that. Also know, when it comes to your networks, your different types of cabling. So your UTP, that's your unshielded twisted pair, your STP, your shielded twisted pair, your fiber cable. Remember, Your UTP and STP are transmitting signals over an electrical wire, whereas the signals that are passing through on a fiber line are going through a glass tube, and it is actually light that's being transmitted. That's why it is faster. Okay, so we're looking at software, choosing the right type of software. Okay, and they just talk about the difference between web applications or web-based applications and installed. Installed means it's installed on your local hard drive. Web-based means that it is actually, you are using it from the internet. Okay, so here we see some web-based applications, things like Google Drive, Google Calendar. These are all things that are based on the internet, and you need internet access in order to use them. Very nice, but you need internet access in order to use them. Then we also have subscription-based software where you pay either monthly or yearly to be able to use that piece of software. So with a traditional, when they talk about traditional licensing models, when I used to go into the shop and buy software, I would buy it, I'd get a license to use it as many times as I want to because it's mine. With subscription software, the user's paying monthly or yearly in order to use that. Okay, so here they tell us, for example, that Office 365 gives you access to an offline version, but you need internet connectivity at least once a month for updates and account verification. Very important. Okay, very important. Then you also want to check compatibility. Is the software compatible with your operating system? You know how they sometimes say your apps can only work on maybe Android devices, or it's for Android and iOS. This is what they're talking about, that compatibility. System requirements, also important. Your software. What does your software need from the hardware in order to work and function properly, function at its optimum? And you'll always see them talk about minimum and recommended requirements. So our minimum is, what hardware does it need just to be able to install and run in a decent manner? Recommended is where we're saying, man, we want hardware, or we want enough hardware so that we can actually have this program run to its full potential. So the working together of the hardware and software is very important. Okay, very important thing. Application software, we know what application software is. We've got our office suites, productivity software. Okay, you guys will just go through that, the different types of software that you get. This will also come up, voice recognition software. This will usually come up when we're dealing with disabled or impaired users. Okay, why would we be using it? What are the limitations? So please do go through that and be able to at least give one example. I mean, Siri is even an example of that. Okay. Yeah, I think that's really all fine there. This does come up every now and then. Fixing software issues, software problems. If a program freezes, we can use the task manager. So they'll either say freezing, or they'll say it's become non-responsive. You want to use Control-Alt-Delete to get to your task manager and force that application to close. If a software or application crashes, you can always open it again. You can always restart your system and then see if that doesn't sort it out. You might have to uninstall it, reinstall it, but those are just some of the basic troubleshooting methods that we can use. Read-only files, well, we can take it and we can actually save it as another name. We can save it in a different location and see if that helps. And then we have bugs. This comes up often. This is not a virus, but it's simply a mistake in the coding. And this is why you find like beta versions of products, because they want people to test and actually see if they can, find out or get to grips with all these bugs and then report it so they know how to actually fix it before it goes out to the public. And then they also talk about user-centered design. When we are designing apps and things like that, you want to look at the layout, the fonts, the instructions, the graphics, all those type of things. Nothing much really gets asked there. Okay, is there PDF regarding all of these notes? No, I actually don't have one. I should probably look at doing something like that. Oh, I just don't always have the time, but yeah, I must actually do that. Okay, so you need to know what the internet is, WAN, our LAN as well, so our local area network, our wide area network. The ISP is always important. That and the services provided by the ISP. Okay, those are things that do come up often. Yes, I did say I don't have a PDF of all these notes at the moment. If you're talking about the PowerPoints here, yes, but what I'm giving you is just based on what I'm seeing from the various papers and that. So yeah, I don't have an official document with that. Now, when it comes to your internet connections, these things, understanding these things, capped, uncapped. Capped means there is a limit. There is a limit on the data I have. Uncapped means there is no limit on the data that I have. Also, shaped and unshaped. And then there's something called throttling as well. So when we talk about throttling, think of you choking someone. I know it sounds terrible, but when you choke someone, you are cutting off the complete air supply to that person. So when your ISP throttles your connection, they are actually slowing down the complete speed of that network, both up and down. Shaped is different. With shaped, the ISP is actually prioritizing certain items during a certain time. So maybe from 5 to 7, they prioritize uploads instead of downloads. Maybe they prioritize emails and general browsing as opposed to downloads. That's when your line is shaped. This is why you'll often see when you get an internet connection, they'll talk about uncapped and unshaped. And those are sometimes the most expensive lines. Okay, yes, I mentioned ADSL and fiber. That's all fine. Oh, your cellular technology. Now, this with wireless can come up because of a scenario. So if I say to you that I want to be able to take my laptop, I want to be able to use my laptop, and I'm going to be up in the mountains for a few days, I'm nowhere near any sort of Wi-Fi zone, I'm going to end up using cellular technology, right? I might take a little dongle with me. I might take a little Wi-Fi router, plug my SIM card in there in order to connect to the internet. Okay, so just understand the difference between that, the advantages, the limitations with that type of technology. Okay, Wi-Fi, we all generally okay with Wi-Fi. Yeah, I think all of that is fine. Please, when it comes to the cellular technology, and it's like 3G, 4G, it's just third generation, fourth generation, fifth generation. It just means the one is faster than the other. The one is the newer technology to the one before it. Okay. And then, guys, we know we have our internet services, things like real-time messaging. I think we're all okay with that. It's not really something to focus on too much. Our voice over internet protocol. This is where we're talking about transmitting our voice over the internet. So the fact that we can make voice calls with, for example, WhatsApp. Okay. The fact that I can do those type of calls, Skype. The fact that I can do video calls with that. Transmitting that over is known as VoIP. So do look at the advantages. Generally, I say to you, look at two of them, two advantages, two disadvantages. And that will usually come up in scenarios. So these type of things now are scenario questions. You'll find that built into a scenario that they are asking you about. Video conferencing is something that comes up often, right? Especially using the COVID scenarios. So do make sure you just understand when it's video conferencing, what am I using? I'm going to have a mic. I'm going to have a webcam. I'm going to need an internet connection. I'm going to need a device as well. So all of those things play a role. And this was important with the last, I think one of the last papers, this actually came in. Okay, looking at some of the good practices when it comes to video conferencing. You want to make sure you've got good lighting. I mean, imagine if I had to now have this and I just switched my light off, or the sound was terrible, or it was just buffering the whole time. That is not going to work, right? So those are just some good practices. Then you need to know the difference between cloud computing. Remember, cloud computing is now when I'm using the product fully online. So I'm accessing Gmail online. I'm accessing my Google Drive online. Nothing is installed on my PC. So I'm using it on the cloud. I'm using it on the internet. Online storage is different because I am saving my files to a space in the cloud. And please, when we talk about the cloud, just remember, this is not just something out there. It's actually a server sitting somewhere else. So I'm actually saving my data, or I'm using programs that are based on a computer somewhere else. Right. There are advantages, there are disadvantages to that. And again, you can just look at knowing at least two of those. File sharing, email attachments. Okay, I think we are familiar with that. We've got our file transfer protocol. This is a protocol, and please, when we talk about protocols, we're talking about a set of rules. So these are the rules that are used for the transfer of files between remote computers with an internet connection. Files are uploaded, they tell us, to an FTP server, or downloaded from that server. And so cloud storage services such as OneDrive have largely taken over this. So when we use things like Dropbox and OneDrive, they are making use of this facility. It also means with that you can transfer large files. I know some of these places, they give you a limit. Then grid computing, you want to make sure you understand grid computing, where we are taking the resources of different computers and we are using it together at the same time to solve a single problem. We're taking all that processing power, all that CPU power, all that RAM, and we are putting those things together. We are using all of that together to solve a particular problem. There's examples of businessmen when they're looking at networking computers to do a growth forecast, scientists, all of these different types of folks. Okay, then we've got government internet services. So it's basically like your government websites, like SARS and your municipalities and things like that. Okay. Yes, I think this was the last one. So your computer crimes. Again, scenarios keeps coming up. So you need to know what social engineering is. Okay. Malware. Our malicious software. That's why we break up the word. Malicious software. Harmful software. The techniques and tools. Phishing. Again, guys, go and check out the videos. I've done videos on these things, on what phishing is, on what farming is, clickjacking, spoofing, spyware. Yeah, all of these. Okay? Please go through the stuff. Make sure that you understand the difference between these, because they can come up in a scenario. They're not going to necessarily mention the type of malware. They might mention it and ask you to explain it, or they might give you a scenario with the explanation in, and they might need you to then tell them what it is. Now, we do have the different types of computer crimes, and hopefully you are not guilty of any of these. Cyberstalking, spam, cyberbullying, etc. Our internet attacks as well. This is something that comes up, especially our denial of service attacks, where it uses those bots to flood the servers with requests. Now, why is this actually a problem? Well, it's a problem because the more requests that come through the server can only handle a certain amount based on its CPU power. And if it's too much, if there are too many requests coming through, it can actually knock out that server. Then they mentioned computers and theft, like your bandwidth theft, identity theft, stealing money, all these type of things. You can go through that as well. We also want to look at how to keep ourselves safe through antivirus software that we need to update. Please remember this. It's no point in having antivirus software. You need to update it. You need to scan your PC using it as well. Okay? So you want to do that. Yes, over here. Some precautions when you're looking at websites. Make sure it's got a lock to show that it's a secure website. Make sure that it's using the HTTPS protocol. So that's for security, right? You want to, and all this type of stuff on like scams and getting these types of emails and stuff, all of that can come up in your scenarios. You don't want to give out your personal info. You don't click on links in pop-ups. You don't click on links in, phishing emails. If you don't recognize who it's from, you don't click on it. Yeah, okay, they mentioned that. This is very important as well. The paranoid ABC, assume nothing, believe no one, and check everything. Now, before I go, like I said, I want to look at a few questions. I've shown you some questions that we've had. And here, for example, under information management, you can see this section that looks at your pet, right? Look at your pet. Mention one way to avoid getting many different or unrelated results on the internet. Well, we just want to type in and be very specific about what we're typing in. One way to present data visually in a spreadsheet. 2 advantages of using Google Form. Okay, so these are typical questions that you can get under information management. Let me just get another one. Here's another one here. 3 important pieces of data that you could use for cataloging. 3 processes or queries that can be done with data. What is an algorithm? There's another term. Difference between information and data. Okay, so these are the type of questions you can get in your information management. I think I've touched on a lot of them. Let me just check what I haven't touched on. Like I said, you are going to get sort of prac questions that are going to be in your theory paper as well. Here was one where they gave you, have a look at these scenarios. 5 problems have been logged with an IT department. And then they give you the problems and they ask you to provide a possible solution to this. Here you go. A monitor in the manager's office is not displaying well. It seems to be tinted yellow. What could the problem be? Well, it could be on the cable itself. It could be a setting as well. One of the old computers using a normal hard drive is becoming increasingly slow and unresponsive. Check that the hard drive isn't full. See if there's no processes running in the background. Use your task manager. You might even need to change the hard drive. Okay? But this is how it can be asked. And there you got possible cause and possible solution. This is how some of these questions can come at you. Oh, also your acceptable use policy and your EUP, EULA, your acceptable use policy and your end user license agreement. Right? Those are also things that come up from time to time. So please be aware of that as well. Let's see what else. Now, when I spoke about the malware, have a look at this. Ergonomics, right? Look at this. 2 ways in which you can avoid becoming a victim of an email phishing attack. Right? These are all questions. Let me get some more. Here's questions based on your POS system. What is a POS? What does that stand for? What are thin clients? Those are computers that sit at the till and it's linked to your servers, but they don't have a hard drive on them. It's basically just the screen and the keyboard and the scanner. So they are thin clients because their processing is not done there, but it's actually done at the back on the server. 2 reasons why companies use POS systems. Okay, so these are just typical questions that come up in your June paper. Let's see. Yeah, here's another one. Looking at Sandiswa, yes, I believe so. You will be. It will be on the channel there, so no worries about that. There's the specs of a PC, and again, you can go through that. You see typical questions. The unit the screen is measured in. Should you upgrade the RAM? Looking at the different ports, all these type of things. I hope this is helping, folks. I hope this is really going to help you, so that you have a good, solid idea of what to expect. So there's some more. Disadvantages of saving recordings or saving things to a cloud server. In other words, saving it onto cloud storage. One cloud storage service that can be used, right? Crowdfunding. How does it work? So you can see how they end up actually asking these questions. They want a definition from you. Then they want to maybe have an advantage or a disadvantage, and for you to actually answer a question that's related to a scenario. And then what else? Let's see. Okay, we've done our operating system. Yeah, we've gone through all of that. Prac questions, switch router. Yeah. Okay, so I think we have covered just about everything. I think that should have us sorted out for the upcoming June exam. Well, at least the June theory paper. So, guys, please share this far and wide. Whoever needs to know, whoever needs the help, send them along. Let them check out the video. And don't forget to subscribe, if you haven't, to this channel, to the TikTok platform as well. And the combination is just going to help you a whole lot. This coming Friday, hopefully, if there's no complications, this coming Friday, I'm going to do a similar session going through the prac modules as well. What we need to do, what has come up also in last year's paper, the year before, what sort of things we need to prepare for. So, folks, thank you very, very much for joining me. Mr. Hambury here, all the way from Port Elizabeth. Thank you so much for tuning in, joining me, and to all your schools and to all of you as individuals, all the best as you prepare for your CAT theory exams. God bless, and I'll see you with our next session, hopefully this coming Friday at 2 p.m.